Surprisingly, I'll talk about freedom tonight. We usually think of freedom as something granted to us by Hashem, by history, by luck, but Chazal teach us there's another aspect to history, and that is viewing history as an ethical duty. And what I would like to suggest today is also as a religious experience or as something that could elevate our religious experience. So I want to start with the mitzvah of narrating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. There is Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim is one of the mitzvot of Leil HaSeder. Chazal tell us all kinds of things about it. And then they tell us something else. They also say, Chayav Adam liot atzmo ke'ilu hu yetza mitzrayim. That is the first source number one. And what I'd like to figure out is, what did Chazal mean by that? What does it mean, and what purpose does it serve to see oneself as if he had or she had left Egypt, he or herself? So in the Haggadah, when we say Avadim Ainu Leparo Mitzrayim, so we say Vayotzienu Hashem Elokeinu Misham Biyad Chazaka V'zo Netuya, and then we add a strange sentence: Ve'ilu lo hotzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu et Avoteinu Mitzrayim, Adain anu baneinu bnei baneinu meshuabadim ainu b'Mitzrayim. Now, it's a very strange sentence because a lot happened in history ever since, and Egypt is gone. And how would we still be slaves in Egypt if there is no Egypt? It's not the same Egypt that was then. What does it mean? So perhaps when Chazal said Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo, what do you think? Is it related to this? Maybe this is what they mean. If our ancestors wouldn't have left Egypt, then we would still be there. And in that sense, we left Egypt because we're free today because they left then. Is that what Chazal mean when they say Chayav Adam liot et atzmo, or are these two separate things? What do you think? The reason why I think maybe they are related is because this is a very strange thing to say. Like, why say it? What do you mean by that? But maybe it is not related. I don't know. What do you think? Oh, thank you. Thank you. And what do you think about the question? Okay, so it's a okay, but then big deal. So if our ancestors wouldn't leave Egypt, then maybe at some other generation, someone else would have left Egypt. Oh, that was the only window. That's what you're saying. There was one window in history, in time, where they could escape, and if not that, maybe. But then it's not related to Chayav Adam liot atzmo kilu yetza mitzrayim. It's not, or is it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sounds like that if we hadn't left, then the whole course of history would have changed. And we might still be enslaved to Egypt. Our children and our grandchildren, our children, we would still be there.
So in that sense, when I say I must see myself as if I left Egypt, that is what I mean, because if that is what is meant, because if our ancestors wouldn't leave Egypt, then we would still be there. So okay. So there are commentators that understand it exactly like that, because they say, how could I see myself as if I left Egypt? I didn't leave Egypt, but my ancestors did. But yes, but if they wouldn't leave, it would have affected me one way or another. And therefore, when I thank Hashem, it's not only for something in the past, but something in the past that made me into what I am in the future. As we are about to see now, the Rambam didn't understand it that way. The Rambam understood it as two distinct things. And let's see. The Rambam in Hilchot Chametz Umatzah, that is source number 3, tells us that מצוות עשה של תורה לספר בניסים ונפלאות שנעשו לאבותינו במצרים בליל 15 בניסן. So there is a positive commandment to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And then he brings the source, Zacho et hayom hazeh asher yetzatem miMitzrayim, okay, and he continues to explain, and then he says, Okay, he says, then he explains that the mitzvah is not just to say it, but to say it to our children, for parents to tell their children the story. Mitzvah להודיע לבנים, ואפילו לא שאלו. Okay, now, even if they don't ask, there is a mitzvah to tell the children. Now, לפי דעתו של בן, אביו מלמדו, according to the ability of a child to understand, is told, okay, and then the Rambam gives an example of how we say it. Okay, very nice. And then he continues and says that even though we have a mitzvah to tell the story to the children without them asking, it is still a mitzvah to provoke them to ask questions, because that would be an even better way of telling the question. So it needs to be in a way of question and answer. We provoke the children, they ask questions, and the answer is, we left Egypt. וצריך לעשות שינוי בלילה הזה כדי שיהיו הבנים וישאלו ויאמרו מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות, עד שישיב להם ויאמר להם כך וכך אירע וכך וכך היה. Okay, so we provoke them, they ask, and they get answers. Okay, וכיצד משנה, how do you make things different that they'll ask questions? מחלק להם כליות ואגוזים, you give them out goodies, and ועוקרים את השולחן מלפניהם, and then we take the table on it at an unusual time and do all kind of things. Okay, then he continues, even if there aren't children, and even if everyone around the table knows everything, it is still a mitzvah to ask questions and give answers, and so say the story. And then he says there are other details to the story, other conditions that we must fulfill while saying the story, and that is matchil bignut umesayem b'shevach. Start it, how do you say gnut? The opposite of disgrace. Yes, thank you. Begin with disgrace and end with praise. What does that mean? מספר בתחילה היו אבותינו בימי תרח מלפניו כופרים וטועים. Our ancestors were heretics and they were עובדי עבודה זרה, etc. ומסיים בדעת האמת שקיבלנו המקום לו והבדילנו מן הטועים. But at the end, he ends with praise, but now we are close to God, etc. So this all has to do with telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. These are conditions about the story. And then he goes, there is another condition, כל מי שלא אמר שלושה דברים אלו בפסח, אלו בליל 15 לא יצא ידי חובתו. Okay, a critical condition to tell the story in the correct way is to weave into the story these three things, Pesach, Matzah, Umaro, and the explanation what they represent and what they are there for, and he continues and says that. Okay, up until now, the Rambam was busy telling us what? The mitzvah of telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Once he ends this in Halacha Vav, he goes on to something new. בכל דור ודור חייב אדם להראות את עצמו כאילו הוא בעצמו יצא עתה משעבוד מצרים. שנאמר, he gives a source to it, each and every generation, a person must show as if he or she left Egypt right now. And he brings the source. ועל דבר זה ציווה הקדוש ברוך הוא בתורה וזכרת כי עבד היית, כלומר כאילו אתה בעצמך היית עבד ויצאת לחירות. Okay, so how do we fulfill this mitzvah? By telling the story as if it happened to us? No, it didn't happen to us. We don't tell the story that way. It happened to our ancestors. So how do we show as if it happened to us? By acting in a certain way. And now he goes on in Halacha Zayin, lefichach, therefore, because of the mitzvah, that we must show ourselves as if we left Egypt, therefore, כשסועד אדם בלילה הזה צריך לאכול ולשתות והוא מסב דרך חירות. We eat and drink as we recline, like free people do. וכל אחד ואחד בין אנשים בין נשים חייב לשתות בלילה הזה 4 כוסות של יין. We drink 4 cups. That is what free people do. אין פוחתים הם, ואפילו אני המתפרנס מן הצדקה, לא יפחתו לו מ4 כוסות, שיעור כל כוס מן רביעית. Everyone drinks 4 cups. Even the poorest of the poor must be provided 4 kosot, that he might be able to show himself as a free person, not just as a free person, but as a free person who just left Egypt now. Okay, and then he goes on, the hasava has to do with that as well, so therefore the reclining, even anisha be'Yisrael misev. So we have all of these halachot of what we do in order to show as if we left Egypt. So we have two mitzvot on the night of the Seder, and both of them are learned from separate psukim. The one is tell the story, the other one is to act as if, and that is a separate mitzvah. So we have two aspects. We tell the story, thank Hashem for it, for something that happened in the past. It's a historical event that we today, we're grateful to God for it because it had implications on where we are today, and we thank God for it. But separately, we have a mitzvah to view ourselves or to show ourselves as if we just came out of Egypt. And my question now is, what's the point? Why? Why show ourselves as if we came out of Egypt? Isn't it enough? Our ancestors came out of Egypt. We understand that it has implications on us, that we are today where we are because all the good things that happened to our ancestors, and that is wonderful, and that is what we thank Hashem for. Why, over and above that, we also have to thank Hashem, or not thank Hashem, we also have to show as if we just left Egypt.
That either of those we could
No,
fulfill the mitzvah, either through the seaport, through the magi, through the telling, or by acting it, because that's the way we're telling it through our action. Is the question really why do we need both?
My question is not why do we need both, but what purpose does the second one fulfill? Meaning the first one is telling the story, I understand, but what does it mean to feel as if it happened to me, or show as if it happened to me? Like, why the acting? Well, what does this come to? What does it add? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. To really, so to feel part. Okay. Okay. I like that. Sorry? Or for the next generation, we want others to be able, meaning the next generation sees how important it is to us when we act it out, when we experience, when we show it as a living or as a live experience. I think there's a lot of truth to what you said, David, and to what you said as well. It's true. But maybe there is something further here. As I said before, Chazal treat freedom or liberty not only as a fortune, but as an ethical duty. And we see this in the very famous Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, source number 4, where Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai היה דורש את המקרא הזה כמין חומר, מה נשתנה אוזן מכל איברים שבגוף? אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, אוזן ששמע קולי על הר סיני בשעה שאמרתי כי לי בני ישראל עבדים ולא עבדים לעבדים, והלך זה וקנה אדון לעצמו, ירצה. So Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai asks, why is it that a slave that wants to remain a slave after the 7th year, after Shemitah, why is it that his ear is pierced? Because an ear that heard in Har Sinai, Ki li bnei Yisrael avadim, and still wants to be a slave, should be pierced. Meaning it's not a good thing to be a slave. There is Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai here is criticizing the one who wants to be slave. So meaning there is sort of an ethical duty to not be a slave, but to be a free person. Before we see source number 5, source number 6 takes it even a step further. Very interesting source. It's in the Mechilta, it's a Midrash Halacha. Rabbi Elazar Modai, one of the great Tanaim, says, Omer, Avadim hayu Yisrael lemlachim b'Mitzrayim. Don't think that Israel were slaves to nobodies. They weren't hard, they were white collar slaves. Yes, they were slaves of kings. יצאו לשוק, they would go out to the market, נוטלים פת, בשר ודגים וכל דבר, ואין כל בריאה מוכה בידם. Meaning they were quite at the top of the food chain. They would go out to the market, they could come and taste and take from whatever they want. No one would be able, not even the traders in the market couldn't tell them anything. יוצאים לשדה, נוטלים ענבים, תאנים, רימונים וכל דבר, ואין בריאה מוכה בידם. They could have done anything they wanted. So that is very strange. Slaves, right? So these are servants of a high-ranking servants, right? They ran the palaces of their masters. They were very important people. Now, how does that account with the psukim that say that Beis Hillel were suffering? Batal shavatam el Elokim. That's a very good question. It didn't bother Rabbi Elazar Modai, so it doesn't bother me right now. But this is how he describes Bnei Yisrael in Mitzrayim. But why? Because I think he's trying to make a point. Yetziat Mitzrayim was not simply a good fortune. It was the duty of Am Yisrael to leave Mitzrayim. They had a good time in Mitzrayim. Why later they say Nitna Rosh V'Nashuva Mitzrayima? Why do they keep on complaining to Moshe in Mitzrayim? Because they wanted to go back. They didn't want to leave. They had to leave. It was their duty. It was the right thing to do. Freedom, we know this, and there are lots of examples. I brought here in source number 5 the story of Sharansky, but the story comes up again and again, right, with people that show themselves, show their freedom in very difficult time, inner freedom, not necessarily, not freedom, not political freedom to do something, but personal freedom to act in a certain way. What comes to mind is, I forgot his name, the character in The Matrix that betrays his friends. No, Neo is the good character. I forgot what he's eating a steak with Agent Smith. Do you remember that? Right? And you have to, right? And he says, who needs freedom when you could live this good life? Right? Now, what is he referring to? The Matrix is a wonderful system. If you are oblivious to the real world, you could live a wonderful life in the Matrix. Zion is this dark, horrible, terrible place, and that is where the free people go. So freedom in the Matrix is a very important point. I think The Matrix is a very good movie. One of the points is because of that, because freedom is that place is that terrible place, as opposed to servitude, which is this wonderful place. I think it's Sapphire. Sapphire is his name. Yes, I think that's his name. Are you checking in? Yeah, I think Sapphire is his name. Okay, anyhow, so Sapphire says, I want to live the wonderful life in the Matrix. I don't want to go and live miserable life in Zion as a free person. Well, what's freedom if all these machines are after us, tearing apart everything and trying to kill us? Freedom is a very scary place to be. So freedom, more than anything else, is an ethical duty. The chidush I found this year is that not only it's an ethical duty, but freedom allows us to have a whole different religious experience that elevates our relationship with Hashem to a place where if we're not free, we're not able to be. And what allowed me to get to this understanding is the Shnayim L'Yom program. So I'll explain. This year, some of us joined the Shnayim L'Yom program, where people all over the year, all over the world, learn 2 Pakim Tanakh a day and complete the Tanakh within a year. And right now we're learning Hosea. Sorry? Oh, Cipher. Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry? We just finished Hosea, right. Today we started Yoel. And we were learning Hosea, and I was reading the second chapter of Hosea, and I actually, the shiur I gave this Tuesday was about that second chapter, but I want to say something about that second chapter. It's an enigmatic chapter, which I brought here. Not clear what it means, but there are some interesting things that Hosea is talking about. Now, I did take creative license, meaning whatever I'm saying now is definitely not the pshat in what Hosea says, but I think it is, these ideas are reflected in what he says. So the chapter starts with talking about the children of Israel in a certain state, and he opens with a conclusion of the perek. He's saying, yes, one day everything will be great. The children of Israel will get together and come to this place called Yisrael. And there would be this name, Yom Yisrael, which is a great day. What exactly is Ki Gadol Yom Yisrael in Pasuk Bet? Yes, what exactly this Yom Yisrael is, it's not so clear what he's talking about, but I'll say something about it in a moment. Then he goes on and he starts from the beginning. So the beginning is that God severely punishes Israel, and Israel is likened to an unfaithful wife, and her husband is very angry and jealous and casts her away, and that is basically the story at the beginning of the perek. And then at a certain point, there is a turn of events. And the turn of events is that the wife wants to come back, but the husband doesn't allow the wife to come back. But something very strange. It seems that what is happening, and if we read the psukim carefully, this is what Hosea is saying. The husband, so to speak, God, is giving the wife, so to speak, Israel, whatever the wife needs, but without independent independent of the wife's behavior. Meaning up until now, it was all about reward and punishment. Now there is no reward and punishment anymore, but in some sort of wilderness, the wife is getting all of that it needs. It gets her vineyards and hope and other things. And the anta shama kimei neurea ucheyom alota me'eretz Mitzrayim. So there's something about like the day she came out of Egypt, but what exactly is he talking about? And then he moves on to talk, והיה ביום ההוא נאום השם תקראי לי אישי ולא תקראי עוד בעלי. On that day, it won't be anymore, you won't call me my master, but my man or my beloved. Our relationship will be more egalitarian, right? But it's talking about the relationship of Israel and Hashem. What does that mean? That Hashem won't be our master; He would be our beloved, so to speak. Well, what is that all about? And then it continues to go. I won't read all the psukim, but in pasuk kaf, וקראתי להם ברית ביום ההוא עם חיית השדה ועם עוף השמיים, Hashem will have a covenant with them and with the beasts of the field and with the birds of the heaven, ורמס האדמה, and what creeps on the ground, וקשת מחרב מלחמה ישבור מן הארץ. What does that mean? That Hashem will have a covenant with them and with all the animals? What kind of covenant that is? And then ורסתיך לי לעולם ורסתיך לי בצדק ובמשפט. What it means is that what Hosea is saying, there would be something more natural then, meaning the covenant with you would be part of my covenant with nature. This is what Hashem is saying. Right now, my covenant with you, Am Yisrael, is a religious covenant, but I'm going to turn it into a sort of natural covenant, and the religious covenant would come upon that natural covenant. That's what I'm postulating right now, and I'm going to explain what that means what I think it means in a moment. Because then it says, והיה ביום ההוא אענה נאום השם, אענה את השמיים, והם יענו את הארץ. What does that pasuk? How do we read this pasuk? Hashem says, so the word e'eneh in Hosea, just that we understand, Hosea's Hebrew is quite different than the other Hebrew in the Tanakh. Hoshea was a northern Israelite. The rest of the books of Tanakh were all Judean books. They were written by Judean Hebrew. This is Israelite Hebrew. It's northern dialect. It's different, and that's why it's very difficult to understand sometimes his language and what he means. The word ta'aneh here doesn't necessarily mean answer, as it would mean in Yehuda. It means something more like move or control or something like that. So Hashem would do something to the sky, and Vehem would do something to the Aretz. But who is the Vehem? So it could be the sky, but it could be the children of Israel, meaning I will be in the sky, they will be in the land. And then Ve'aretz ta'aneh et hadagan ve'et hatirosh ve'et hayitzar vehem ya'anu et Israel, and the land will bring about the dagan, the tirosh, the yitzar, all these crops, and that will somehow connect to Israel that the Navi opened with. Okay, and then and then I'll tell my not people, you are my people, and those who I don't have mercy for, I'll have mercy then. Okay, very strange, very strange. You all lost me, right? Because I lost Hoshea, so of course you lost me. We all lost each other. But I think what Hoshea is saying here is something that we could take and somehow throw on our situation today. I won't explain Hoshea, we'll just talk about our situation today, and then we'll see how it fits Hoshea somehow. Hoshea is talking about a different relationship with Hashem. The relationship with Hashem that we know from the Tanakh is the type of is a relationship built on fear. That is throughout the Tanakh. Israel go astray, Hashem is angry, he punishes them. They realize that this came to them because they left Hashem, and they come back to Hashem. Why do they come back to Hashem? Because they love him? Because they realize they have to do the right thing? No, because it's bad for them when they're not with him, so they come back. Okay, and then things are good for a while, then they go astray again, and then they come back to Hashem, and so on and so forth. And Hoshea says that tshuva is not good enough for me anymore, says Hashem. I don't want that type of relationship. I don't want to be your master. That is a relationship between a master and its servant. That is not a relationship between a lover and his beloved. I want that type of relationship. And therefore, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you whatever it is you need without you asking for it, without you behaving the way you should behave. That is what he's saying, right? Holachti hamidbar. I will take her to the wilderness, and I think here what it means is a spiritual wilderness. Where is it? Pasuk Yud Zayin. V'natati la et karamea misham. And there, in that spiritual wilderness, I will give the people of Israel everything they want, everything they need. Vineyards, fields, hope, everything. And then, v'haya bayom ha'u tikrei ishi ve'lo tikrei od ba'ali. On that day, when you'll decide to come back to me, you will come back to me, Israel, not because you have to, not because you don't have anything and you come to beg for whatever it is you need, but because you love me, because you want me, because I'm your beloved. I'm not your master anymore. This is what Hoshea is saying about the relationship of Am Yisrael and Hashem. And this made me thinking, it got me thinking about Zionism, and about our life in Israel today, and about where we are today. Zionism, when we look at it in its historical context, is running away from Hashem, right? So we had first Chovevei Tzion, that those were pious people that really wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael as part of their belief in the Geulah, but that didn't really catch. What really caught was secular Zionism, and that's why it was the secular Zionism took over. Secular Zionism said, no, forget about everything. We're just coming back. We're forming ourselves as a people, and we have to understand it in its historical context. And its historical context is part of modernity, and modernity is where humankind finally got out of his shackles? Yes, right? Where the humanity at before modern days, we were afraid. Our life existence was scary. We didn't understand how the world works, what makes people sick, why do people die so young, and why do children die, and why everything is so scarce. We didn't know how to make ourselves well. We didn't know anything. We knew very, very little. And all we had is to turn to Hashem and pray and ask Hashem that please make things better because we don't know how. Today, most things we know how. We know how. We know a lot. Modern man controls reality, existence, masters his own destiny in so many ways that in ancient days it wouldn't even be thought of. And Zionism is part of that because modern man now takes responsibility for his and her own life. If I was born 500 years ago, I could barely take care of myself, never mind my family, my community, society as a whole, the climate. Can I think about the climate, right? 500 people, it's not that they didn't care about the climate, but it had nothing to do, they didn't realize, they couldn't comprehend that it has to do something with them. But modern man today lives in a way that we today, it's not only society as a whole that we care for, we care about the entire world, about the universe. We feel responsibility. So we are free to such an extent. This knowledge and understanding the world and being able to control the world gives us freedom to such an extent where we're not afraid in many ways, and we feel that we are responsible for our own existence, right? Today, people always make plans. 500 years ago, most people didn't make plans because there was nothing to plan for. I mean, you don't know what will be tomorrow, what will be 2 weeks from now. Now, we're living in a war and we managed to have plans. I'm sorry? Well, you say that, right. But in a way, the fact that we're sitting here today at time of war, and we have rockets that are being shot at us, but we have the technology to shoot back other rockets and to know when they come and to go into shelter. Only a few generations ago, we'd be shaking in our boots from this situation that people are shooting rockets at us. But now we feel, yeah, we're in control with everything that is happening, and terrible things are happening, and we can't belittle any tragedies that are happening. But as a whole, it's unbelievable how much control we have for what that is happening. And Zionism and the people of Israel coming back to Eretz Yisrael is all part of that movement of humanity, if you want, taking control of its own life. But by taking control of its own life, it's also stepping away from Hashem, because Hashem is no longer in the picture in the same sense that he was beforehand. Hashem is no longer the provider. Now, in a very deep sense, he is. But he provides whether we're good or not, meaning whether we ask him for it. It's not our behavior needs to be right, not in the religious sense, but in other senses. Meaning, if I want to secure my economical future, and I don't know if it's healthy for a rabbi to say this, but it is more important that I go and study a good profession and make sure that I'm able to get a good job than going to shul and davening. Going to shul and davening would help, but the other things would help even more. And that we know that. I mean, statistically, we could check. That's how it works, right? So we live at a time where Hashem gives us not according to our religious behavior, but according to what we do in the world, because we know what ticks the world. It's a different kind of existence. And I think this is what Hosea is talking about. Now, I don't know if that is the prat in Hosea, but Hosea is saying One day, our relationship with Hashem is going to be such, not of beggars in the who are asking for something from their master, but as almost equals. I'll be there in heaven controlling everything from above, but they will be down there on the land, understanding how things go and controlling everything there. And what does that do with our relationship with Hashem? When we now come to Hashem, we don't come to Hashem as it's not as out of fear, it's out of love. It's a whole different relationship. And I think this is what he's saying, והיה ביום ההוא נאום השם, תקראי אישי ולא תקראי לי עוד בעלי. So coming back to Chazal, I think what Chazal are saying, and what the Rambam is continuing to say, is that when we come out of freedom, is a long journey that started, or our freedom as a people and as individuals, is a long journey that started in Mitzrayim. In Mitzrayim, we gained, let's call it political freedom. We were taken out of Mitzrayim. And then Chazal say, we want you to go a step forward and to go and have personal accountability and responsibility. Take it a step forward. But I think today, what we are witnessing and perhaps experiencing is a whole different level of our freedom. It's freedom to such a degree that allows us to have a new relationship with Hashem, a relationship not that our ancestors not always were able to, not a relationship of fear, but a relationship of love. So when Chazal tell us, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim, I think this is what they mean. Yetziat Mitzrayim is a perpetuating idea. And this might have been what David meant before, right? It's something that started in Egypt, but continues throughout the generations in a deeper and more meaningful level each and every time. You know, there is this song that used to, and still to an extent drives me crazy, and that is Hakadosh Baruch Hu Anachnu Ohavim Otcha. Because you see these people that are just dancing, and I mean, what does it even mean? Hakadosh Baruch Hu Anachnu Ohavim Otcha. But I think it reflects a very deep instinct of our young generation, that they feel that our relationship with Hashem is a relationship of love, is a relationship of really having this deep connection to Hashem, as Hashem provides us out of love, and we love him back. So next week, when we'll be sitting in the Seder, I will be thinking about the Tayasim who are flying in the skies, which is unbelievable, because when you read in Tanakh, you read of battles where no one died, and you tell yourself that cannot happen. And then we are living, I mean, not in all battles no one died, but right now, and Be'ezrat Hashem it will continue, the metosi, the flights that keep on going back and forth to Iran. It's unbelievable that nothing is happening. But I think there is one difference between the miracles that are happening in Tanakh and the miracles that are happening today. The miracles that are happening in Tanakh, then if the human beings were responsible to them, it was only through their piety. But I think the miracles that are happening today, human beings are responsible for them because they're performed by human beings, meaning the technology and the methodic way that our pilots train and their, how do we say, mishmat, their discipline in the way they execute that all has to do with the way these operations work. Now, I'm not saying that Hashem's hand is not there, but we mustn't ignore the human hand in all of this. And that is also it's a different kind, it's a different kind of miracle. And being able to, quote unquote, perform these miracles, we could really stand in front of Hashem as true partners and call Hashem Ishi, not Baali. And when we stand in Leila Seder this year, I think that is what I'll be thinking about. Chag Sameach.
I don't want to say, but it's like his doctor is something about miracle error, Esther Panim, and then partner that we're now in the error. There's partner with God.
Interesting.
It's so fun. I keep saying I'm going to read it one day.
The challenge we have is live as free. This message